everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Cybersecurity Chronicles. I'm Sean Mahoney with NetSwitch. Today I'm joined with Stanley Lee, CEO and founder of NetSwitch. And today, Stanley, we have a special guest.
Yes.
Get ready to feel inadequate professionally and educationally. Today we have Dr. Stylianos Kampakis, is an expert in the field of data science. Dr. Kampakis is a data science advisor at the London School of Business, a mentor at Cambridge Judge Business School, a research associate at University Central London Center for Blockchain Technologies. He is also chief data scientist and head tokenomics at Electi Consulting, advisor for algorithmic tokenomics at Pollen DeFi, and serves as a data science advisor at several other organizations. He holds 7 different degrees from educational entities, including University of Cambridge, University of Edinburgh, University of Central London. He is currently the CEO of TESSERACT Academy and is a published author of the book Decision Maker's Handbook to Data Science. Wow.
Thank you for joining, Stelios. I'm not going to try to even comprehend what you have achieved. And, for our audience sake, boy, it has been a journey for me just to learn how to speak your language. Forget about understanding it. But at the same time, it has been a great journey, and we've been working on and off together for the last 4 or 5 years already as our company advisor. Thank you very much for joining us, Stylos, and really appreciate that you are on board with us.
Hi, guys. Well, the pleasure is all mine. I'm looking towards a very exciting discussion this evening.
Well, fantastic. Well, let's start off with sort of a softball question for you. What is data science? Everybody reads about it nowadays. So give us just a general idea. What is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, when I teach, I often like to lead with this question. And the short answer is that data science is about extracting value from data. And I know this sounds a bit open-ended, but the reason I give these definitions is because data science encapsulates many other fields. If you want to be, let's say, a bit more specific, you can see that it has a history spanning over 200 years. It's something which I'm actually talking about in a book I'm currently working on. And the term data science came about fairly recently, let's say 10 to 20 years ago. It's when it started becoming more popular, essentially trying to bring all these different fields together under one umbrella. So whereas, let's say 10 years ago, someone would say I'm a data scientist, and this would mean that they might be doing machine learning, statistics, data analytics, all sorts of things. And different people would have different interpretations. I think now data science has become like an umbrella term, which is on one hand fairly like open-ended, and it really encapsulates many different disciplines. And I think that's really for the better, because we're seeing a convergence of different, let's say, ways of approaching problems in data, as well as different methodologies and different techniques. It's one of the reasons that even though I have a degree in statistics, I have a PhD in machine learning, I call myself a data scientist instead of saying, I'm like a machine learning specialist who also knows statistics, this and that, right?
So, well, we read about it all the time in articles nowadays for business, how important data science is. And so, and artificial and machine learning, these are all buzzwords in just business in general nowadays. So where does data science fit with artificial intelligence?
Another great question. So I think that AI is essentially the bigger vision, which started around the 50s in the US in a collaboration of different institutions like IBM, Carnegie Mellon, MIT. And this vision really refers to replicating intelligence in a synthetic way, whereas data science is a bit more pragmatic, a bit more, let's say, down to earth. So the goal of data science is to extract insights from data. And this is often much simpler and much easier to do than achieve the AI vision. Actually, the full AI vision is more of an aspiration, right? So it's more like the things you see in science fiction movies and you read in science fiction novels. it's debatable as to when and how we're going to achieve this objective. Even though most experts agree that it is eventually is going to be achieved at some point this century, most likely. And I actually believe this as well. And while AI as a term is being thrown around a lot, I personally believe that in the majority of cases, when most companies are actually using is data science, as most companies that don't really create any kind of fundamental innovation, let's say, in the way we approach data or we approach intelligence in general. But that being said, I see the term AI being used more and more freely these days, maybe because it sounds cooler than data science. And that's fine as well.
So, in the area that we work within the cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning is all the rage. And as you just said, it's really data science and the interpretation of that data that is leading to certain decision making through systems. And it's not really artificial intelligence, but it is a good buzzword. So, where does data science fit within cybersecurity?
I think that the future of cybersecurity is going to, I wouldn't say that it relies solely on AI and data science, but I think data have a huge role to play in this. Obviously, cybersecurity, an interesting mixture between engineering, art, and science. And obviously, there's lots of domain knowledge involved, which is actually something that makes automation of cybersecurity more and more difficult. So I guess the problem of using data science and AI in cybersecurity is not too dissimilar from the problem of trying to use data science and AI in medicine. On one hand, you can see how this would be automated. On the other hand, there's lots of domain knowledge and context around it. But I think that there's probably a broad agreement amongst experts that in one way or another, we are going to move towards an era of more automation in cybersecurity and the use of AI, like for various use cases. Really.
Is it the movement of towards automation, or is it really more the distillation of a vast amount of data through data science methodologies that is going to help move things faster in cybersecurity?
So I think it's not so much the methodologies, I'd say, because I think we have many, many different powerful methods in data science and AI. I think what might really be lacking is how to bring all this together along with domain knowledge in order to make sure that we deliver, and by we I mean data experts, and obviously how we can work with cybersecurity experts. Again, I personally see, maybe someone else has a different opinion, but I personally see many, let's say, similarities with medicine, where again, there's like computer scientists have been trying to use AI to automate clinical diagnostics since the 70s. And what has actually prevented AI from taking over is that the AI needs to understand the context, right? It needs to understand the domain. And it's the same thing with cybersecurity. So I think that the techniques are there, but I think that maybe the knowledge has not been mapped out. Maybe the problem is that we also need maybe more data and structured in a better way in order to be able to answer some of these questions. Because also in order to use AI and data science and cybersecurity, you really need a blend of techniques. So natural language processing, optimization, maybe graph theory. There are many things going on, right? So it's not like a vanilla problem. It's not something I expect that's going to be solved tomorrow either.
Okay.
And this is where I have a question, in the terms of reinforced machine learning or augmented intelligence. So these are the things that you and I, Stylos, are working on how to resolve this cybersecurity problem. Well, I don't think we'll ever resolve it. But at the same time, how can we streamline the process and make it more efficient, faster, better for the stakeholders to use the data science to learn about their organizations and outcome with some of the recommended remediation process. So the term reinforced learning and augmented intelligence. Can you share more about those terms with us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, reinforcement learning is a particular instantiation of machine learning that essentially you have an agent, an algorithm, which learns in a dynamic way. It's constantly updating, constantly learning from the environment. So this is very useful in environments which are constantly shifting. It's also useful in domains like robotics. Then I think augmented analytics, augmented data science, this narrative essentially describes a group of technologies where the objective is to like take, let's say, some algorithms and then use them in a way that they can enhance the decision-making process. And this is like an interesting approach to solving problems because essentially you're accepting that you can't really automate a pipeline end to end. So you're like, okay, since I can't automate this, then I'm going to build algorithms which assist in decision making, and then I'm going to provide the relevant information to an expert who's then going to make a decision, a better decision, also ideally faster. Yeah, and I guess this is a first entry point in many industries. This is what might actually happen in cybersecurity. So we might see some form of augmented analytics before we see full-blown AI, which is obviously the long-term vision.
Right, and that's where the domain expertise comes in, and people keep asking me, you don't know way that you're going to replace some of the professional. As I said, that's not the case. It really is to shifting their knowledge standard and increase their knowledge and helping with the AI to do their job better. And at the same time, you and I talked about using the meta heuristic optimization
Yeah,
model in particularly in actually even drilling down onto how can we create a pattern for the decision making process to provide the recommendation by correlating the data between the stakeholders input and the company and the community responses. And that's part of what we're doing on the cyber risk governance system that we are developing. And of course, this is something that we needs to be putting more efforts into it. But at the same time, I think I just want to ease people's concern about, oh, the AI is going to take over my job. We're not going to, yeah, and we everything is going to be replaced by machine. That's not the case. It's really relying on we need the domain knowledge. We need the everyday operational expertise and experience to make a better decision
yeah,
and a faster one too.
yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's
And
really
I
like,
think it's also we talked about, sorry to cut you off, but our goal is really just to reduce the human error part of it. And because why does it cost the human error part is just because the volume that they're getting. A lot of people now they throwing money at the tool sets, the solutions, the different kind of technology, but they forgot, well, who's going to operate them?
yeah,
That's the key. It's like we know that there's a shortage of 3 million, over 3 million cybersecurity professional around the world. So yeah, great, you have the budget to buy the shiny toys and the Rolls Royce of the IT in monitoring. But at the same time, well, who is going to have that time or the human resource to learn through that process? And so I think that the path that for our audience that who knows about what we're working on and the cyber risk governance system, in particular this part in the AI, machine learning, and data science, is not about replacing anybody's job. It's really how can we do it better, faster, and actually using the AI to increase the knowledge level of the daily operators that who has to handle it. Now, a lot to do, well, of course, shows my age, 20 some odd years ago, is that we have to, we don't, there's a lot of tools that we use and we have to use manual calculations to crunch the number. And now, well, who does that anymore? What is a calculator? It's like a lot of people don't even know what a
yes.
calculator. It's all in
Sure.
the phone anyway. So, I mean, that is the evolution that we need to start and well I at least to try to educate some of my colleagues. We have to start moving the bar. We cannot be continue looking at IT as it was 15 years ago or 10 years ago. And now data science, AI are tools to help us to do our job better and more efficient. So that's the angle that we're going into, and especially what is complicating the matter is now is full, putting in the governance control, such as the territorial scope, the responsibility of data controllers and processes. These are manual driven and policies and procedures and has to be interpreted by somebody. But they might only need to do it once or twice. Then we can let the machine learning to take over and to continue to coach the machine learning, like why I brought in the term augmented or reinforcement intelligence. Of course, I can't differentiate the different. This is Stylos where you come in. and talking about the different modeling that we have put together as a to do our proof of concept. All of these that requires domain knowledge, and the way that we are approaching it, yes, we might know about IT, we might know cybersecurity, but we still don't know much about the governance controls. And these are why we're partnering with consultants, risk management, even insurance company to add their input into it. And then the other part of it, well, what does it mean to the company itself? Even though we have the domain knowledge, but we don't know the company. And that is another part that we need to add their input to make it more efficient. So now that we have gone all the way to Mars, what I keep saying, these are the very futuristic, but not too future because it's right around the corner. We already start doing some work into it. They're now coming back into how, the problem that everybody, it's like, how do we start? Where do we go from here? And I would like to, Stylo, maybe you can take a shot at it. What should we do? Now that we know all these tool sets are great for our future, the very near distance actually. It's very close by already. But where do I start? As an organization, large company has all the resource, they can throw it into it. They have their own blockchain technology. They might have their own AI. But as a medium-sized company, where do they start this process? What do they need to do?
And if I may add something, I think it's really the medium-sized companies that face many of these issues because the large companies, they always have the resources to deal with stuff. And it's actually the small to medium-sized businesses that usually benefit the most from automation of any kind. And I just think cybersecurity is no exception. What do you think about that?
As an exception or?
I think it's no exception.
Oh, it's not exception. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sean?
Yeah, they would benefit. I think the small, mid-sized businesses would benefit from the automation and the artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence from a data science gathering of some sort, only because they're going to lack the resources, going to lack the personnel internally, they're going to lack the money to really pay for a large expensive system. And so for a way that is affordable, that brings all the data and breaks through all of the noise of the data for them and distills it down to actionable information is going to be critical to those small and mid-sized businesses.
All right, let me throw a devil's advocate questions, and is my data safe? Because now that's a big question, right? With all the governance regulations throwing into, the data privacy issue. And I live in California, so California Consumer Privacy Act, now they are taking another revision at it, and now it's going to be more enhanced. So Stylos, and I know that you have blockchain technology expertise as well. So tell us more about, how we can use blockchain to increase the data privacy. And at the same time, we looking at the blockchain data lake to address the data privacy and sovereignty issues because we see more and more countries that they're going to require or even local regulations that has to address the sovereignty issue. So tell us more about the blockchain technology. I know that we're not going to have, a lot of time to go in depth, and we just start touching on the AI side or the machine learning side. But give us a flavor about the blockchain technology in terms of how to increase the data privacy and sovereignty.
Yeah, so I think there's not like only one way to do this. I think there are many people, me included, which we have talked about potentially using blockchain so that the users can keep ownership of their data, and at the same time, not only they keep ownership of their data, but they can also like monetize it. So it's not the big companies that own the data, but it's the users. So I think that's like one obvious case to do it. In my opinion, it's like the main case, right? So essentially you transition ownership, because otherwise, in terms of for example, cybersecurity, keeping data private, there are like regulations right now, which are obviously difficult to be enforced. Right? But at the same time, if you have something on the blockchain, then essentially it's kind of like public in a way. So I know that IPFS was essentially can provide this functionality. What was this other project? I think Airweave, that Solana, I think is using, that is also involved in decentralized data storage. Even though, to be honest with you, I'm a big fan of these ideas, but I don't think we've seen anything definite for now. Like a lot of good thinking, and but I think we're far, at least in the near term, from a solution in this space. Even if in principle, blockchain seems to pretty much solve many problems in this area.
Wow. It's an area of interest that we spent a good bit of time talking about, is in the blockchain and where that's going to go and what it can mean to organizations as far as being able to share data, that some of their knowledge from their data with a larger community, but still retain that ownership of the data and leave the community if they choose to. So there is a huge area to learn, Dr. Kampakis. I appreciate your time today. And for our listeners, if you have questions about data science, there's certainly some places to go. There is a particular book that I mentioned earlier, The Decision Maker's Handbook to Data Science. It is for non-experts like Dr. Kampakis. It is really for CEOs, executives, and founders, and it's a good area to start. And then also, if you have any questions, you can look for Dr. Kampakis on LinkedIn. If you have questions about NetSwitch, you can check us out at NetSwitch, NETSWITCH.net. And Doctor, thank you very much for joining us today. Stanley, thanks for jumping in today. And we look forward to talking to all of you next time on the Cybersecurity Chronicles.